We have the creator and the head of Irrational Games, Ken Levine, right here. And also joining us, and it's really going to make this panel quite fascinating, are two of the voice actors from the games. Obviously playing the role of Elizabeth, Courtnee Draper. And the voice of the man that we all will be playing, Booker DeWitt, is Troy Baker. Did they show the Ken slide up there?
Show the Ken, yeah. Look at that.
I think that's just all. It's like a Wilco album. So Ken, I wanted to start. I'm assuming everyone in this room has played BioShock, and as phenomenal as the game was, and I've asked you this before, how does one pitch a game that's, hey, it's an underwater city, it's Art Deco, there's a lot of Ayn Rand elements to it, and they say, oh, here's a few $1 million, please go and make that.
How do you pitch it?
Yeah.
Over many, many frustrating years. You know, it took a long time to sell that game. And look, and I can understand, well, what always happened is we'd go pitch it to some publisher, and we'd have some guy at the publisher who was a System Shock 2 fan. He'd be like, oh my God, we gotta make this game. And then he'd go to his higher ups and he'd say, oh, we gotta make this game. And they'd be like, well, how many copies did System Shock 2 sell? And he'd be like, what? And then they find out the number, which was almost fucking nothing, and then that would be the end of that. And it took finally till I met Susan Lewis at 2K, who was a believer and got the company behind it, sold it to her higher ups, and made it happen. And then they ended up buying the company and really investing in the game and making it to be what we hoped it could be. And but it took a long time.
You are very singular, I would say. And if you look at the games,
yeah. No, he's married.
Singular. Obviously, you worked on the original Thief, which really kind of opened up the world to the idea of stealth gaming. Obviously, System Shock 2, which is easily one of my favorite games of the 90s. Even Freedom Force, which I've gone back and dabbled in recently. What's your approach when you want to do these games? That you seem to come to them with a clear vision, and you seem to know how to execute on that vision quite well.
Well, just to be clear, there's like 100 and so on.
Oh yes,
people
yes,
at
say that. Yes,
yeah. It'd be a lot cheaper if it was just me, but it's not. Generally, I think we start with something that we're passionate about. System Shock 2 was easy because I was the biggest System Shock 1 fanboy. I didn't work on it, and I came to Looking Glass. That was one of the reasons I came there. And when the opportunity to come up to do that game came up, it was just such a no-brainer for us because it was the first game game I ever shipped. Thief was, and so that we already had the IP. That was a little clear, and we knew that we just had to put more Shodan, and we'd have a good game. With Thief, it was really, I got fortunate to work with a guy named Doug Church, who was the guy who really led creatively Ultima Underworld and System Shock 1. And like my first week at Looking Glass, I got put in a room with Doug, and they're like, the mission was to create action RPG was the mission. And we kicked around a million ideas, and eventually, and they kept changing, but the thing that kept coming up, Doug and I kept coming back to, was having an AI that would see you and not immediately attack you, but go, hey, is somebody there? And that, for all the different versions of the game design, for a while it was a game called Dark Camelot, for a while it was a game called Better Red Than Undead, for a while it was a game called Dark Elves Must Die. It was all these weird games, and then finally Paul Narath said, why don't you make a game about a thief? And we took all these ideas we had and we put it into this Thief idea, and that's what it became.
I mean, has the idea of approaching a game and designing a game and making a game, how much has that changed over your career? I mean, obviously from Thief to the original BioShock.
Well, it's a much bigger team now. It used to be, I think on System Shock 2, we were like 11 guys in a single room for like 13 or 14 months, and that was, everybody knew what everybody was doing because we were sitting right across from each other. Now when you have like, 100 and some odd people, communication becomes a huge problem. Just how does everybody know what everybody else is doing? And that it sounds stupid, but you really just don't know what other people are doing. And quite often you have situations where somebody's doing something over here and somebody's doing something over here, and they're totally different. It's a lot easier when it's an area that I'm sort of very much at the center of, like the story stuff. And I can just work with Troy and Courtney in a recording session, and we know pretty much everything what's going on. But across a huge project like that, it just gets overwhelming.
So, BioShock Infinite, obviously it has the BioShock name, and I assume everyone here has seen at least the trailer, if not the demo. Yes, good.
We have it. That's easier.
Yeah. We have the trailer. How about you give us an idea of what you're trying to accomplish with this game? Because while it says BioShock, it is a very distinctly different game from the original.
Well, I think after we finished the first game, we were kind of left with a real problem, which is well, what do we do next? And we kicked around a lot of ideas for around 6 months, and I don't think we ever felt that for us doing just a sequel and Rapture was the right thing to do, because. And we had the same problem to some degree after SWAT 4. We were like, Vivendi wanted us to do another SWAT game, and we were like, well, we just did a SWAT game. As much as we liked that game, we didn't know what else to do with it. And there's some people may be familiar. We almost did a game that we called Zombie SWAT, which if you go to our webpage, you can see some videos of this zombie meets SWAT kind of game that was sort of a prototype for a lot of stuff. Well, I don't know, it wasn't a prototype, nobody saw it. But it was a game before there were a lot of zombie games. And we really struggled with repeating ourselves and not knowing exactly what to do. And then Stephen Alexander, our senior effects guy, the guy who made the water in BioShock, amongst a million other things, said, well, what if we just were to do another BioShock game, but basically throw out all the rules? And we immediately sort of all tuned into that. And I think we were nervous for briefly. The publisher would be like, are you guys fucking kidding me? But they were very open to it. They were very, very open to it. And and so we just started getting rolling then, and the first thing was, well, the only things we really want to keep as sacred is the sort of weapon in one hand, power in the other hand, and you've got this world, this very believable but crazy world that you're exploring, but everything else is really up for grabs.
All right, well, let's take a look at the trailer to see what happens when you throw out all the rules.
Peggy 18.
Elizabeth,
Promise me.
I will stop him.
That is an oath you cannot keep. But promise me that if it comes to it, you will not let him take me back.
Even from this angle, it's still really, really cool. So obviously one of the things shown in the trailer, round of applause. What seems to be so distinct from the original BioShock is this sense of sort of characters right there, and the characterizations, everything was coming over, and that's of course why we have our two lovely talented people here. When was the decision that you were not going to follow that BioShock rule and actually have someone in there that you were interacting with?
Well, we had really painted ourselves into a corner on BioShock, because if people are familiar with, the twist where you learn who Jack is and where he came from, and the fact that he was sort of he's this cipher who is by design a cipher, we couldn't really go back and make another game, honestly, where you were a cipher, because I think the first question people would be asking is, okay, who's he really? Who is this guy? And that really left us with a problem. And I think that whenever we have a real problem, we always try to say, okay, well, what's the opportunity in this problem? And the opportunity we found was, let's go against what our instinct is, and let's really try to embrace character in the storytelling. Because, you know, if you look at BioShock 1, it's basically a museum piece. You know, you're in Rapture after it's fallen apart and after the party's over. And we said, well, what if in this story you were the catalyst for what happens in Colombia in a lot of ways? And what that meant is, okay, well, if you're a catalyst, you have to be sort of a living, breathing person. And that's where Booker DeWitt came in. And then if we wanted Booker to have a character to interact with, you know, we had an idea to have this woman, Elizabeth, in this story, but we never really thought about the kind of what that would mean in terms of building a relationship between the two of them. And in fact, for a long time, both Booker and Elizabeth were silent because we were, you know, it's that thing like you're hanging over the precipice, but you don't want to make the jump. And for a long time, people would say, well, Elizabeth would say this. I'm like, no, she's not going to say anything. She's not going to talk. She's not going to talk. And then I realized that was just not going to be, that was not a sensible thing to do, and it would be a missed opportunity. And so we just started talking about, well, what would it mean to have this to be a person, to be Booker, and to have this person with you, and do it in a way that people hadn't really seen before. And you know, that started a very long and probably the most challenging process in this game is Elizabeth and Booker.
So Courtney, you've had past acting experience, but you were kind of, I might be done with the acting thing, going to law school now, but then suddenly, you know, this opportunity presents itself to you. I mean, I can't imagine you were seeking out, I need to be in a BioShock game.
Is this on? Yeah. I did, is this thing on? I didn't, yeah, I mean, I did acting for like 10 years, and then I just thought, I don't know, this really isn't for me. It's not making me happy anymore. For various reasons, and I decided to go back to school, and I got my bachelor's from UCLA, and I kind of was doing voiceovers a little bit here and there. I probably actually did about, I mean, I want to say about 5 auditions for voiceovers in the last couple of years, and one of them was for BioShock, which I didn't even know what that was, and I know. And then I went to law school, and I was like, I think this is what I'm going to do, and then I ended up booking BioShock, and was debating, like, well, should I do this BioShock thing? Like, what is this? And before I even knew how, I guess, big people would think BioShock was or is, I got really excited about what it was. So I didn't realize how big the franchise was. I just realized that I really loved the creative process, and the things that I didn't like about film and television, which kind of repelled me a little bit from that industry, was gone with working with Ken and working on this project. So I just decided to try and do both. So I am here on my first weekend after beginning law school and doing this, which is totally different. So
I'll show you wrong.
Yeah, if I don't get in BioShock 4, I'll sue everybody.
Troy, you're more of a self-professed nerd.
Yes.
Were you aware of BioShock when this opportunity came past you?
Yeah.
Very much so, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. Courtney's playing Elizabeth, you know, a character that you see. Now, obviously, you're really voicing a character that is also who the player is going to be. I mean, does that put you in a funny position in terms of how you're going to be articulating him?
Funny is a weird word, but yeah, and Ken and I have had several conversations about this. You know, when you take an FPS, it's also an RPG, and then, which the whole point is to be this immersive experience. But then when you give that first person character a voice, you can be, sometimes you can, and I've seen it happen before, to where you actually pull the player out of that experience, because I wouldn't say something like that, I wouldn't do that. So here you have a narrative and a huge story that you're trying to convey, and you also have a character that is incredibly stoic. He's the strong, silent type, and never says anything without thinking about it first. How do you convey that kind of emotion and intention without seeing the face? You know, and a lot of actors give you the eyes, you know, and you can't do that in this case. You've got 2 hands. And what was really cool was, you know, I told Ken, I was like, this is really ambitious. Are we going to be able to pull this off? And it was really cool because he's embraced this phrase and drilled it in my head of draining the swamp, of just pulling any of the ideas that you think you need to compensate and just really trusting him. Because the benefit and the asset that we have in this is we have Elizabeth there to really sell the fact that Booker's taking a second on this decision. He doesn't know what to do. He's scared. He's awed by what she just did. So it's not a it's a challenge, but like Ken says, it's more of an opportunity. No one's ever done anything like this before, and the time and the attention that's going into it, it can't fail. The story's too good, you know. So, but at the same time, it is on us to make sure that we don't suck.
We do have some very interesting video clips. I want to show one. It's the first sequence that we saw in the trailer of like kind of what the voiceover process is like. So let's go ahead.
Elizabeth,
Promise me.
I will stop him.
That is an oath you cannot keep. But promise me that if it comes to it, you will not let him take me back.
It won't come to that. All right?
First, Courtney, what's that awesome hat?
First of all, this is my disclaimers. I did not know that. I knew they were filming for purposes of animation. I didn't know they were filming for purposes of 600 of you seeing that. But yeah, that hat is my nemesis in this process. I hate it.
Prada is actually coming out with it next.
Yeah.
It's a very high-tech piece of gear. We take a baseball cap and we cut everything but the middle,
the
and
bill,
we stick a
yeah.
microphone on it. And
Yes.
I thought it was just
video
G4.
games,
I had no idea.
Yeah, that I'm talking about doing. We're gonna do some revamp that hat.
Merchandising. Come on, guys.
So in doing that, Courtney, did you have an idea of what the game was going to look like, how the character would be animated? I mean, where was your head when that was going on?
I mean, a lot of these, and I think you'll see in another clip, is that this doesn't just take place over one recording. A lot of these different pieces are covered over multiple recordings. So at various points, sometimes the animation's not even done. Sometimes Ken just has an idea, and all these things are constantly being reworked. So at every different level in the process, we all have a different idea of exactly what it's going to look like. What I can say is that when I saw this demo at E3, I was blown away. Like, I could not believe how incredible. And I have done stuff, and you never know what your work is going to look like at the end. And I've never been as blown away as I was watching this demo.
I would have to concur.
She discovered what a squee was. And then shortly a glomp thereafter. It was pretty cool.
Ken, so what did you have in mind before you saw the voice work, and then after Courtney did the voice work, did the scene change? I mean, like, what's kind of the ebb and flow of that?
So the way we work this is, usually when I did System Shock and did BioShock, I never met any of the actors on BioShock. I met them over the phone, and we would just do, basically, I'd be sitting there in a conference room on a speakerphone, and we would have the actor in New York or in LA, and I'd be directing them over the phone, and they had the script, and I would do some rewriting on the fly. I had a fair amount of rewriting on the fly. But it was, by nature, it wasn't a very intimate process. And with Booker and Elizabeth, we decided very early on that we would need to get to know each other. So we actually flew Courtney and Troy out, and they actually they sat next to each other on the plane and really got to know each other. So by the time they came in, they already had understanding of each other, they knew each other, which you don't get a lot of opportunity to do. And I was trying to be very honest with them. I said, look, I don't really know exactly how we're going to do this stuff, because what's hard to understand is that, these aren't cutscenes. These are bits that are going to happen in the game. The whole sequence of Elizabeth in the store, with the Lincoln mask and her goofing around. We don't know if the player's going to look in this direction or that direction, or if the player's going to run out or start shooting, or we don't know what's going to happen. So we had this whole incredible system where that Chris Klein, our technical director, is driving, wherein Elizabeth and other AIs are constantly watching the player to see what the player is doing and trying to become the player's improvisational partner and try to see cool moments that can happen. And if they're the right moment, play that piece of content. And if they're the wrong moment, maybe wait and play it later or do something later. But not having done this before and not even having the technology really in place when we did these recording sessions, I had to do a lot of guesswork. And then it's like, you have that whole technological question, but then you have getting the characters right. And I hadn't been in the room with these guys before, so I tried to write, getting a sense of them. But once we got in the room together, and I started hearing them talk, it was more important to me to write something that would feel comfortable for them and natural for them rather than a preconception I had. And I think that's always much stronger if you have an actor who's committed, that they're going to find the truth of the character, and the more you could write to that, the better.
I think this brings up another thing. Some people have wondered when they see that demo, how scripted is it? How much does the game, obviously I've seen over the years that, when you show a demo, you want to show the game being played very effectively to be able to get a sense of it. If you wouldn't mind sort of clarifying that for the audience.
Well, we had a lot of that after E3. People were like, oh, the skyline sequence must be scripted, or, the part in the store with Elizabeth must be scripted. And there are moments that are scripted. Like, for instance, in that scene in the doorway, that's a nice, for us, that's a really nice gating moment. We know there's a quest item in that store the player's going to have to get. We know the player's going to go in the store, and we know they're going to leave the store because they need a quest object. So that we take out, whenever we have an opportunity to put a specific moment in, we will, but 99% of the game, inside the store, who knows what the player's going to do? Who knows what Booker's going to do? Who knows if he's going to spend any time in there at all besides doing what he needs to do? So we have a whole system that basically monitors what the player is doing and watches it and tries to introduce content that seems very natural and organic, but it's basically watching the player all the time and saying, can I do something now? And then Elizabeth, as an AI, not as a character, is constantly saying, can I do something now? Can I do something cool now? Can I pick up the Lincoln mask and put it on my head now? And if she can't do it in the store, well, maybe we should do it in another part of the level. The AIs, you saw a bunch of AIs who are fighting each other and beating each other up. We have a whole system where basically the AIs are sort of saying to each other, in sotto voce, come over there and beat the shit out of you. And the other one's like, cool. And they negotiate, but they have to negotiate under the table because we have to make sure we don't know what the player is going to be doing at any point. So we have to make sure that it's the right time. So it's it's probably and Elizabeth is the biggest problem for this and the biggest opportunity because she's always right there. Just getting her in a place where you don't have an actress with an actor's instinct to know where to go and to know to engage. So we have to get her there. We have to get her to the right place where she's looking at Booker but not standing right in front of him in his way. Because what you really want as an FPS is somebody constantly standing in front of you that you have to walk around. So she has to be there but not too there. She has to be pointing things out, but she doesn't want to be driving the process. So as an FPS, the player wants to be driving the process. So it's a very challenging thing, but it's also really exciting. And what I love about these two is I basically were able to bring them in, and I think a lot of times, a director wants to say, I totally know what I'm doing here, don't worry about it, you're in good hands. I basically said to them, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. And I need you to work with me and collaborate with me and try to figure this out. And that's what we did. And they were very open to that, and they didn't freak out, and we just started figuring it out.
Troy, would you like to just confirm that you didn't freak out?
I freaked out. No, not at all. And it really is, and again, we're still so early on in this process, and you guys have seen just, very barely scratching the surface. But it really has been, a lot of directors and a lot of actors say it was a very collaborative process. But it really is. There were this one scene of 3 lines that we sat and camped on for a solid hour. And just got out of the room and we're like, okay, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do with this? And Ken is incredibly open to suggestions and rewrites. There's no ego involved. It really is just trying to simply make the best game possible, and specifically the best scenario possible for the player.
And that's not, I would say that, I obviously haven't done that much video game work, but that is, that kind of humble nature is not typical of people in this industry. There are a lot of people, a lot of directors that are just,
Their scripts are
they're more
printed on gold.
narcissistic than actors, if that's possible. Yeah, some of them are just really don't want you improvising. They don't want you changing anything. They have a very clear idea, and they put you in, and as an actor, in that box. And a lot of times it's you're fighting to try and be creative still. And Ken is not like that at all. It's really it's a testament to him.
I think it's important that I think Amy Hennig and the guys at Naughty Dog have really done a good job of showing the industry and inspired me to that the actors are a real asset for you if you let them be, rather than something you have to dictate to. Obviously it's legendary how effective how effective Nolan North and those guys have been on that project. And watching those videos, I said, I started really seeing the opportunities, and also just not knowing exactly how we're going to accomplish this task. I needed to collaborate with these guys.
Hey, let's look at one more clip of some of the VO work of, I would say, one of the more emotional scenes that we saw in the demo.
Baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Shh, it's gonna be okay. Shh. Just calm
It's a
down.
horse. Horses die.
He's in pain.
Not for long. I need you to step back.
Wait, there's a tear. See, right here.
Elizabeth, it's just an animal.
I can control it this time.
It is too powerful. You won't be able to stop it.
I wasn't asking for permission.
And also, let's go ahead and run the next clip, which I think if any of you have seen the demo is one of the most shocking moments in it. So let's go ahead and take a look at it.
What did you do? What did you do? Close it! Close it!
Trying!
Close it now! What was that? What was that? Talk to me, Elizabeth!
You were right. I can't control it. It's not possible.
Well, with what just happened, do you really want to take bets on what's possible? Let's go find Comstock.
It raises so many questions. Yes, Ken?
Yeah, so this scene was super challenging for us, and we're going to show in a second how it happened and how the actors really made it happen. Because in a movie, to get the amount of the problem we have as a game developer is this is not a cutscene. So what if the player runs off? What if the player wants to run ahead to the next thing? We have very limited time. All we could basically do is make the park a certain size so they can't get out of that scene, quickly enough to get to the next bit and ruin this emotional moment. So as a writer, I have to write really fast. Like that scene, if I was writing as a movie, I'd probably want to take a minute and a half to get Courtney to legitimately build to the emotion. So the problem I had as a writer is she had to get to this really strong emotional place for saying you were right, but she didn't have as an actor any time to get there in the scene, in an actual scene. So we were really struggling with it all day, and then we had the idea that, I think you had the idea that Troy should...
Berate me?
Berate, by the way, if anyone couldn't pick up what that word was.
Yeah, not rape me or whatever. Because that would make me really...
Someone could rape me.
That
That would help.
That's like a whole nother...
So you had this idea that Troy would be a douchebag to her, and
Which was a real stretch.
And not Booker, but Troy as an actor, basically we asked Troy to help with just get her to the state, never intending to use any of his lines, but get her to the state where she could reach this point emotionally. And we'll show it, and it's kind of interesting. It was fascinating for me as a non-actor to watch these two actors working because, well, why don't we just show it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and see it. It's quite something.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Do you need something to build to it?
Yeah, it's hard to just jump in because I'm like really emotionally exhausted. So it helps, like all the stuff helps, but
What can we do without killing your voice here and there?
I'm thinking, I'm not just thinking.
Help if he berated you a bit?
Oh, what?
If he berated you a bit? Berated you?
Yeah, sure.
What were you doing? What were you thinking?
Absolutely.
You're gonna
Moron.
work. You're gonna get us fucking killed.
I like that.
Okay?
And more, if you think plans about like you're never like playing into my fear of like I'm never like you're never gonna be free from it. Like just to help me get into it, Troy.
I'm listening.
Okay.
What were you thinking? Taking this stupid fucking risk. You're an idiot. You're such a child.
Yeah.
You're never. This is never gonna happen. So just give it a shot.
Hey,
Pull it the fuck together. Look at me. What were you thinking just now? You think you can just run off and do this? Look at me!
Keep going.
Yeah. Don't get offended.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
No, I just don't want you to stop.
Fucking child.
Shut up!
Yeah, it's Glenn Gary's went wrong.
That was to Ken, by the way.
I don't care if you're uncomfortable or not. Pull it the fuck together. You've either got this or you don't. The fuck were you thinking?
Keep at her, Trey. Keep at her.
Yeah, she's got it. She's need to fucking focus. Don't fucking laugh.
Okay, you were right. I can't control it. It's not possible.
With what I've seen lately, I wouldn't put a nickel on what's possible. Now, come on. I think it's time we found Comstock, okay?
Can we do it once more?
Yeah.
Can you scream at me a little more? And then be nice.
What an asshole!
I think one thing that's truly remarkable, and maybe you guys don't know this, is that when you do voice work, you typically don't have two actors in the same room. It's just kind of done in isolation. And
Very rarely do you get the opportunity to do something like that. And so then you take, again...
Without being arrested.
Yeah, there's always that. But you know, we had this scene, and it wasn't just a challenge for Elizabeth, but it was also a challenge for me because, you know, you don't want Booker to all of a sudden go, I'm so sorry, and all of a sudden show that, you know, turn up and show his belly to her. It still has to be this, I just saw something that completely freaked me out, and I just realized that I really hurt you, so, you know, come on, just throw some dirt on it, you'll be all right. And I mean, you also have to, I'm going to say this, in that, we were in a space of...
Oh my God, that room was so small.
4 feet by 5 feet, maybe? 6 feet by 5 feet? We were close. We were real close. And so when she's looking up at me, I am literally, I mean...
Like right in front of my
face.
face.
Right in her face. And it got, I mean, we're able to look at that now and laugh, but it was awkward.
And this was, I mean,
really awkward.
This was my callback. Yeah. So this was the first time I'd ever...
Yeah, we had like flown over there together and go,
let's have a drink. It was very like the worst date of my life. No, it was interesting too. I mean, watching that, like, I'm sniffling because it like makes me feel... It's weird because when I first saw this clip, when they were saying, hey, this is what we're going to show, I felt so uncomfortable watching it. But in a room of 600 people,
it's funny.
It's funny. Which
we do it again? What's wrong with you?
It's really bizarre. But I mean, if you guys were to see this, I mean, I feel like it's so different if you were to see it individually, to how awkward you feel just watching someone do this. But and there's a part where I'm like, you know, it's weird because I'm watching, saying like crying and crying, and like keep going, you know. It's just like,
well, all of the production crew was outside going. They were freaked out. Is he going to hit her? Ken, you want to step in here? I ain't stepping into nothing.
And that's a typical thing. I mean, when you, like Ken was saying, when you have such a limited time, this was the end of the recording session. My voice was like, I was sick. I was exhausted. Like, I did not think that. And Ken was like, we need to keep getting to this emotional level. And I really did not think I had it in me. And that's where it's kind of a testament to this collaborative idea that we're telling you guys. I mean, this project genuinely has that, and we all were helping each other in the creative process, and that's, I mean, to have a team dynamic like that is, I mean, I'm really grateful to have.
We all hugged it out after that too, so don't worry.
And there was a line where I think we were laughing over it, where I'm like, "You fucking psychopath!" Like, you know, it's a good fun.
Ken, obviously we've seen how like intense that scene can be, but we haven't addressed the other thing. It's kind of weird, like the way it's like the street and it says "Revenge of the Jedi." Do you have any insight as to sort of how that came about, that you decided to have this shocking moment in the course of the demo?
Yeah. So that scene actually, we originally started the demo. All Elizabeth was doing was healing a dog, a small dog, and the problem was it didn't read, this tiny little dog, and we had a horse from the previous demo because the guy threw a horse at you, and the challenge was my lead artist like, another fucking horse, dude. And I was like, yeah. But originally the scene was quite different. It was the environment was transformed into like a primeval forest. You really wanted to show Elizabeth losing control of her power, but the problem was the primeval forest didn't look that different from the forest or the little park that they were in. And Irrational had worked on the game for about 6 months after BioShock, which we never announced and never talked about, but we had a whole bunch of assets from it. And we were like, well, what if we were to do like if instead of a forest, we need something totally night and day. So it has to freak out Booker, completely freak out Booker and completely freak out Elizabeth. Well, something that they would be complete, because these are two characters born in the 19th century, remember? Something that the audience would be quite familiar with, but they would be quite unfamiliar with and would totally freak them out and be a fun surprise and shock for the audience. And we just happened to have all these assets sitting around, unused. And so we went in a day, our effects artist, Stephen Alexander, basically put together that entire street scene. And then we sort of needed that final little touch to say what was going on here, and that's where the movie marquee came from.
Revenge of the Jedi, not Return of the Jedi. The original
title.
movie.
It was interesting to see half of Irrational knew that reference and half didn't, and I was very ashamed for the guys who didn't know that reference.
What was the song we ended up going with? That's playing.
Oh, the Tears for Fears song.
It is Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought we went back and forth. Because we're recording on. Dun, dun. I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
Troy, so, I mean, did you guys have a sense when you're doing the VO for that, just how dramatic that scene was going to be? Just this moment of, hold on, like the entire reality of the game just kind of drops out.
No, and what's funny is that was actually an earlier version of that scene was part of the audition process, and so you're arrogant. I'm arrogant. You're not arrogant. You're okay. But you think that, wow, what I just did was awesome, and then you put it in Ken's perspective, going, that is so far off the mark. I like where your head's at, but to see that specific scene develop, because we do have a lot emotionally tied to it, because we have all the experience. It's probably for me. I'll just take
whose
it.
phone is that?
It's my mom. To go from the point where it is, from the primeval forest now to the street in the middle of the 80s, we had no idea, and it was even not fully finished when we finished recording it. So the first time that we truly saw everything was at E3. So we sat down in that theater and we're just like you guys, just like, So I was.
It took me about a good 5 to 10 seconds to realize just what had happened.
Yeah.
And it just kind of just moves in. I'm like, hold on, this isn't right. So Ken, when you have the VO, I mean, what's in that process of hearing that and then forming the character? Because like as opposed to Uncharted, which is mocap, you guys aren't in the silly suits that make you look like
just
sad
a silly
ninjas.
hat.
You're obviously animating the characters and animating the scenes. What's that process, and how much does the VO kind of guide you through that?
Well, what we do is I write the scene as I originally intend it, and then we go into the studio and we change it and we work on it. And then sometimes we find out that we need something different. Like you saw some of those bits there where Courtnee was like wearing different outfits. That's because those sessions were 2 or 3 months apart from each other. And we would actually find little bits of each performance that, as we figured out exactly what the scene wanted to be, sometimes we'd have a performance that was great, but there was one moment in it that didn't feel as right, but maybe there's another moment from 2 months earlier that was better. So I work with Justin and Christina in my office, who basically are great for, they know every single take, and they are basically put candidates in front of me and say, well, what do we have? A little bit of this and a little bit of that, and sometimes we construct performances out of a bunch of different things, and quite often that's not because there's a problem with the performance, it's because what we actually decide we need to do in the game changes slightly. And sometimes scenes, like the opening part of the demo, the very opening part where they're outside the store talking, we didn't originally intend to even have that scene. We had no scene. And that was just a bunch of sort of ad-libs that we put together and made a scene out of, and probably out of 2 different sessions and 15 different takes. But that's the advantage of not doing the motion capture, is because you have a lot of freedom then to mix and match that stuff, as long as the sound quality is in the same ballpark, which it usually is.
Now, I believe we have some demo of sort of the various stages you've gone through in creating a scene that we saw in the demo. I believe it's when the Songbird is kind of tearing off the roof.
Yeah, you know, this is, I think it's kind of hard to understand when you see really polished stuff. You know, there's a process there, and we have, you know, like George, our concept artist, you know, I write the scene, and then we sort of work with the concept artist to sort of like try to get to envision what it's gonna play out like, and then you sort of go from the pencil storyboards to early animations, and this is, I wish we had actually even an earlier version of this, because this is just like a gray box version of the part where Elizabeth comes in and stops the Songbird. What's really interesting about the first version of this is the Songbird was much more aggressive originally. Yeah. The first animation that John Mangagill did, and he was driving the situation, and he was basically saying, all right, Elizabeth, come with me. And we decided, and this is after the recording session, would be a lot more interesting if the Songbird was the angry girlfriend, essentially, or the jilted lover in a lot of ways, and Elizabeth became the active driver of the scene. I think that made him a more interesting character. It made her a stronger character, because the sacrifice was very much in her hand and of her doing. And then, you know, we have the final version with sound here that sort of shows all those elements coming together and making the final scene. You can see how.
So Courtney, did Ken have to say, like, okay, now there's this really big mechanical birdie thing that's kind of like leaning in, and
if you're scared of it, ooh.
I mean, a lot of times, and in the audition process too, like Troy already touched on, like there were these, like this scene and the horse scene where we didn't know what we were working with, and Ken was trying to describe kind of the indescribable, and so that we would know, kind of have this idea of what was going on. So I really didn't know. That's why I think I was so blown away by seeing the demo, because that was when even my best imagination didn't even come close to touching what Ken and the rest of the people on this project actually brought to fruition.
And one of the things that I really love about that again, you get to see the actualization of Ken, your intention, was that the Songbird is not looking at her, he's looking away from her until she says, "Take me home." And then he looks at her, and then his eyes change. And we shortened that scene because originally it was a lot longer. Songbird was torturing Booker. And because I had like fallen through this glass, and I had glass all through my skin, and he was just like digging in. And I loved it because it was like really visceral, and I'm a glutton for punishment. I love to go, ah, you know. Like I haven't done that before. But it was really cool to see that scene really get tightened up and truncated because, and we talked about this, and you said it was like there was no purpose for it.
We also ran out of time. Like that scene, like John Mangagill was working his ass off, and we just ran out of time to do all those bits. So that happens a lot of times. You run out of time, like, okay, what is the heart of this thing? Right. And it was really about, it wasn't about Booker and the Songbird, it was really about Elizabeth and the Songbird. So we just sort of truncated that part, and I think it made a stronger scene as well.
Ken, I wouldn't say that any game you've ever worked on would be realistic in terms of the way that it presents human beings. This, I would say, is one of the more stylized I've seen. Does that give you certain benefits in terms of getting that emotional read out of the animations? Because I don't think I could see that scene play out with something that looked, say, more like Call of Duty.
Well, obviously
the RPGs and to be done.
You know, the Songbird obviously is exaggerated and ridiculous, but you know, it's a tribute to our animators so they could get that emotion, that very familiar, like, I'm not going to talk to you, turning your head away thing that we've all been in fights, you know, with our boyfriends or girlfriends, and we've all had that moment. And for them to do that with a 30-foot tall bird guy, you know, I thought was a real impressive feat. I mean,
it really is.
Look, I just describe it. I'm like, no, John, it's like you ever have a fight with your girlfriend, and he's like, yeah, that's not my fucking girlfriend. That's a giant 30-foot tall bird guy. But an animator, a good animator, will be able to take those beats and then translate that into, you know, we also talked about how birds turn their head. You know, their head sort of can turn really quickly. Also, he doesn't have eyes he doesn't look at you. He looks from the side at you because the eyes are on the side of his head. So it takes a really talented animator to bring all those elements together, but also make them, everybody who sees that knows what we're talking about. We're talking about a relationship, a damaging relationship. But, you know, it's such a strange couple. I think that, you know, sorry, what was the question now?
I actually, also when, say, in the animation of Elizabeth.
The exaggeration.
Also with her eyes, her dewy eyes. I mean, here's a character that you've got to develop a relationship with. And I have to say, those types of emotions that we're already seeing just in this little snippet from the game are not ones that you see very frequently in games, and when you do, they don't tend to work. But I mean, I'm wondering how, like, you're clearly working with the animations and the stylization of the art direction to try to convey that.
Well, you know, one of the reasons we decided to make Elizabeth a little exaggerated is because her emotions, the emotions had to read at a distance. And because she's often, we don't control where Booker is. She's not always in cutscenes. She can be the other side of the room and have to convey something very important. So by exaggerating her features a little bit, she's able to project her emotions, you know, I think a lot more easily into the player.
I have to apologize. We have had such a fascinating discussion up here that we've run out of time in this room.
And it's all your fault, Adam.
Yes.
You control time.
I do. It's an amazing power I have. But, guys, thank you very much. I would like to have a round of applause for Levine, for Courtnee. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to doing more of this and seeing more of the game until it gets released, hopefully next year. Thank you all very much for coming out.
Cheers, thank you guys.
Thank you.